So a great classic example of this is curb cuts in the sidewalk.
Okay.
Those were designed for people that use wheelchairs, right? So people who lack power in some way, shape, or form. You know who benefits from curb cuts? Yes, people that use wheelchairs. I do when I'm rolling a piece of luggage or pushing a stroller, right? Or if you're riding a bike, you're using a skateboard, maybe you're rollerblading, maybe you're pushing a cart down. So many people benefit from that innovative design.
Welcome back into the ROCC Pod. I am John Gay from Jagged Detroit Podcasts.
I'm Lisa Bibby, your neighborhood realtor with Keller Williams Advantage.
You may recognize today's guest's last name. We have Paige Robnett, of course, who is Jill Robnett's daughter. So if you know Jill at the Chamber, she encouraged her daughter, Paige, to join the Chamber, and we are thrilled to have her. She is with Robnett Consulting. Welcome to the podcast, Paige.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Okay, before we start, you told us offline you have a love for karaoke. We need to ask you about this. Tell us about, what you sing, where you sing, how often. Give us the rundown on your karaoke affection.
Listen, karaoke is a passion of mine. I'm not going to sit here and talk about how talented I am at it.
It's not about talent.
I've got the passion, I've got the drive, I've got the enthusiasm, and that's what I have to offer. So you can see me around Metro Detroit. I'll probably be performing any Beastie Boys song.
Yes.
Yes. I want to see.
I did do competitive karaoke when I lived in DC.
Ooh.
And didn't win, but had a great time. So that's a story for another day, but really, really fun.
We will try to sabotage the interview.
Oh,
great
John,
transition.
he's always got the good ones.
Once a radio DJ, always a radio DJ. Okay.
So, Paige, you also have a picture of you with your dog on your front porch on your website on the About Me page. So, tell us more about your dog.
Okay, so that's Denny. She's basically the mascot for Robnett Consulting. Denny, she's not with me in the room today, but I mean, that's my pride and joy. I named her. She's named Denny. I went to Denison University. That's where I met my partner. So we're nerds in that way. But if you're in the Berkeley, Royal Oak area, you'll probably see us walking around.
Oh, I love it. We'll keep an eye out for you.
And what's great about dogs is they don't care what you look like. They don't care who your partner is. They don't care about any of that stuff.
Unconditional love.
Not always as easy with people.
So you're saying we should be like a dog and love unapologetically?
That is exactly what I'm saying, Lisa. So with that in mind, Paige, let's talk about your passion for diversity, equity, inclusion, also known as DEI, and how it led to you starting Robnett Consulting.
It's been a journey. So I jokingly like to remind my mom when I told her I wanted to be a women's studies major in college, and her first reaction was, oh my gosh, you're never going to get a job. I try to remind her every time or every chance I get that I'm doing just fine. Business is doing just fine. People are always going to need help working with other people. We are human. It is really hard to be a leader. It is really hard to be on a team. I grew up playing basketball. I bring that mindset into the work that I do, into the clients that I work with. But just because it's fun to be on a team doesn't mean that it's easy.
Right.
Well, I want to back up just a second. I think your mom was right. You weren't meant to have a job. You were meant to create a business, which here you are with your own business.
Thank you for that. I love that. It wasn't my dream to start a lifelong business. I'm happy I'm here. I was a part of the group of many folks doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work in 2020 that got laid off when COVID hit. And then all of a sudden, we're super busy in the summer of 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. So I didn't realize I started my own business. I just kept doing the work.
Yeah.
And then I found myself Googling LLC ? So it just sort of happened.
It is funny how we all kind of fall into that. And so many of the chamber members are, I'll speak for myself here. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Like I never thought I would own my own business. And, it wasn't until late 2018 when I Googled LLC and I Googled and saw fill out the state form for $50 online or pay an attorney $500. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to start doing things on my own.
Relatable.
It's not a big jump from being a women's studies major to getting involved with diversity, equity, inclusion. Can you kind of give us just like an overview on it? I know it's for some folks, it's a buzzword that they don't know a lot about. Like, give us the 10,000 foot view, if you would, please.
I'm happy to, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, these are terms that are getting weaponized.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misunderstanding. And I find that once we just slow down and actually understand what these words mean, it's not so controversial. The work that I do is I help organizations, I help leaders achieve diversity, equity, and inclusion outcomes. So diversity, right? Making your workforce composition more diverse, invisible and invisible traits and characteristics. I help organizations become more inclusive. So those are those feelings of feeling included, welcomed, valued, all of the things we know make people want to stay at their organizations. And then equitable, right? Making things more fair. That's what it really comes down to, so that every single person can thrive in their organization. And I find when we break down those terms, it's a lot harder to argue with. Most people share a lot of those same values.
So Paige, I absolutely love your enthusiasm with this. Tell us a little bit more about this unique approach that you have in the work that you do.
Yeah, there's a ton of research. I'm a nerd, right? And there's no shortage of research out there that talks about when you have all three, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or you're making progress on it, you outperform your competitors. Doesn't matter what industry you're a part of. You retain your staff. You help teams work better together, more effectively together. People feel safe enough to share new ideas. You're more innovative. You are more productive. You're more profitable. You make more money. And so actually, I mean, it's the approach that I take. It's the approach that my teammates take. I have the viewpoint. I don't think it's that unique or groundbreaking. I mean, I don't want to sell myself short. I'm very good at what I do. But in my opinion, it's not rocket science. And it does take expertise. Mm-hmm. So that's what I bring, and that's what I offer. I bring not only an expertise in diversity, equity, and inclusion change, but change management in general. And that's what I have seen missing from a lot of other organizations or clients that I work with that say, look, we've been doing DEI for 5 years and things have gotten worse. When we start getting into what they've been doing, I feel like it's missing that change management aspect to it. So that's what I bring to the table.
And I feel it starts at the top. If you can get the leaders dialed in, it's just going to have a ripple effect across the whole company.
Could not agree more. That's absolutely the approach that I take. We start with leadership. We start with, we're honest about power, where power lives in the organization. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Having power is just, it just is. It's how you use power. So we absolutely start with leadership.
I love when you talk about with different perspectives. DEI is a core value of my company, Jag in Detroit podcast, because I think as a straight white man for the first, 35, 40 years of my life, I didn't realize how good I had it, because it was just my normal. It was just my lived experience. Honestly, until I moved in with my now wife and saw, what she deals with in corporate America sometimes, just being female, not even being, a particular minority or anything like that. But also what I've come to realize in owning a business, in especially doing podcasts for folks from all different walks of life, is having that perspective on your team, having diverse perspectives. And I'm going to stereotype here, and not having a boardroom full of straight white men. Having those different perspectives brings different ideas. So it's not surprising to me when you say that when folks include those different perspectives in their company leadership and empower them, that they do have great results because they have many more ideas coming from different places.
When you break it down like that, it's easy to see how you can get on board with it.
Yeah.
And I also want to say too, the approach that I take is we need white, straight, cis men as a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
The approach that Robnett Consulting takes, we don't do shame or blame. I've seen or observed some DEI initiatives go off the rails with that. And
I bet.
We take a completely different approach. If you have any type of power, whether it's identity power, right? Being a white person or being a man or being able-bodied, whatever it is, or you have positional power, you're a CEO of the company, or you have subject matter expertise power, like podcasting or technology, John, whatever it is, we need you. We actually cannot make progress if you don't creatively find ways to share some of that power or empower others. So I work with all types of people, but I love people who maybe are new to DEI or have a lot of power in their organization and just don't know what to do with it, because we can get really creative.
I see this a lot of times where, and I call it the pendulum swing. It's gone so far this one direction. And oftentimes when people try to correct it, they want it to swing so far in the other direction to make up and try to balance it out. And they're missing the whole point. Like, there actually has to be a balance, and that balance is right in the middle. So, Paige, I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit more about what do companies actually struggle with the most when it comes to DEI?
I'm taking a pause because there's a lot. It's a hard question to answer, right? There's a lot, and it's so unique to every organization. Here are some things in no order of importance that I see companies struggle with. One is that leadership buy-in at the top. And without it, there's no progress. Sure. It can actually do, if organizations start, and we saw a lot of this in 2020, right? If organizations start DEI and they start externally, they make a bunch of statements, they redo their website, or they start DEI with just talent systems. That's another common misconception, is that DEI is just HR. And just your mitigating bias in interviews or performance reviews. Look, that's a huge part of it. But most of the clients I work with, they're still at the point of trying to get leaders wholeheartedly and authentically bought into this work. That doesn't come overnight. That takes time. And that takes intentional internal communications. It often takes coaching, which is another thing that Robnett Consulting offers, one-on-one private coaching to process a lot of the change that these leaders are experiencing. So without that buy-in at the top, change just doesn't stick.
And I think you really hit the nail on the head with, you need coaching, because so oftentimes it's like, this is your norm. You've been living this norm, and somebody steps in and says, well, we should do it a different way. It's mind-boggling to that individual to go, well, what does that mean? How do we do that change? Because again, the norm is where their comfort level is, and they are easily able to kind of fall back into that comfort level. When we need to push people into that change, that might be a little difficult to do, but they need a coach like you to help guide them.
It's such an overlooked intervention for change. And I think this goes for any area of our lives.
Yeah.
Way, right? Like having a trainer, think about DEI or changing your organization's culture like you would with wanting to get in better shape, right? I have found, unless I have a coach there or a teammate that is holding me accountable and challenging me in a kind way.
Yes.
But what motivation do I have to challenge the status quo or the way things always have been? So that one-on-one coaching can really provide a space, one, honestly, to grieve a little bit of the, things. The train has left the station.
Yeah.
Things have changed. New generations are entering the workforce. It's not if your workforce is going to change. It already has changed.
Gen Z's now working. Yeah.
Process that change. Have a safe, trusted partner to process that change. Talk about what you might feel like you're losing. And then we can shift to everything that you're gaining. But without that space to just kind of name what's going on, it's really hard to just get on board with a totally new way of doing things if that hasn't been your norm.
I think you're really nailing this, as Lisa said, because back to Lisa's point about the pendulum, is I think the misconception here, and this is where I want you to jump in about the social backlash against DEI that's been coming out lately. But it seems to me like where there's been such a small concentration of power, and when you try to change that dynamic and bring in DEI, the misconception, I feel like, is that those in power are losing power to those that they're helping, as opposed to everybody gaining. They feel like the pie is limited, and if somebody else gets a bigger piece of pie, their piece of the pie becomes smaller. And I feel like that's probably the misconception at the root of a lot of this, Paige.
It's a total scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
And listen, we're human beings, so it makes sense. I fall into it myself, especially when things are stressful. And for business owners, especially small business owners, right? You have a lot of competing priorities. So I feel that myself. I find myself going into a scarcity mindset when I'm overwhelmed or frustrated, or for whatever reason, things are outside of my control. So it absolutely makes sense. The approach that we bring, Robnett Consulting, is we help leaders realize that it's not just about shrinking or what you're losing, right? To the point about what you're gaining. There are so many examples of when you design systems, processes, policies, procedures in your organization with equity in mind, with inclusion in mind, so it becomes the default. It doesn't just help people in the minority or people who have been historically excluded. It actually also benefits people in power. Mm-hmm. So a great classic example of this is curb cuts in the sidewalk.
Okay.
Those were designed for people that use wheelchairs, right? So people who lack power in some way, shape, or form. You know who benefits from curb cuts? Yes, people that use wheelchairs. I do when I'm rolling a piece of luggage or pushing a stroller, right? Or if you're riding a bike, you're using a skateboard, maybe you're rollerblading, maybe you're pushing a cart down. So many people benefit from that innovative design. Texting is another great example. Was designed for a group of people who are hard of hearing, and look at who benefits from texting in society. We can get really innovative, and it can not only help people who lack power, but it helps everybody.
I love those analogies.
And you had talked about the scarcity mindset. I also feel it's really an outdated mindset. And this is how I explain it to people. Think about it like this. Back in the day, we had records. You went to the store and you bought a record. Every time somebody bought a record, there was one less record. You have to make another one. Now and today, our mindset and our technology has shifted with all of this AI and this, like now you can go to a site and download something and there's not one less, there's actually one more.
I love this shift to an abundance mindset, right? And there's lots of great examples of it. And that's another, not only with coaching, we do consulting too, strategic consulting, but with the coaching piece, especially in that one-on-one or team coaching setting, it doesn't happen overnight, or at least it doesn't in my experience, but with intentional accountability, a plan in place, and a trusted partner, you can work on shifting that mindset, moving from awareness to doing something about it. And you can do it by playing to everybody's strengths. So yeah, it's really, really important.
Yes, I love this. Oh my gosh, I have like tingles. Like I'm like buzzing. This is so phenomenal.
I feel like we could talk to you all day about this stuff, Paige.
I know.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
It's my favorite thing in the world. So thank you for making my whole week.
All right, now it is time for our fishbowl question of the day, where we pull a totally random question and ask you to answer. So Lisa, would you pull our fishbowl question today, please?
Yes, let me dig into the fishbowl. All right. Paige, what's something that you have learned in the last week?
I have new team members for the first time. So I have 2 interns working for me, and they are amazing. They are super, super smart, new ideas, super driven, and I am experiencing what my clients often experience. So generational differences, differences in experience, expertise. So I'm learning patience. And I'm also learning, or last week it was made very apparent to me, just how hard it is to, like, there's a sense of urgency with all of this work. I feel it especially for diversity, equity, and inclusion work. When everything feels out of my control, sometimes work feels like, and working with my clients, it feels like the only thing I can control. Mm-hmm. I've got to watch my own sense of urgency around this work, because things like building trust, building and maintaining trust, and building relationships with people, especially the people that work for you, it just takes time.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm working through right now. It's really helpful and really important.
Well, it has been so amazing to have you on our podcast today, Paige. Can you let our listeners know how they can reach you?
Yes. So I'm local here in Metro Detroit, everybody. I grew up in Metro Detroit. I was in DC for 8 years. I'm back. So would love to meet with folks in person, but you can get a hold of me either through LinkedIn, Paige Robnett, or my website, robnettconsulting.com. Really looking forward to getting more involved in the Metro Detroit area and hoping to get some more clients here, put some roots down.
Well, my name is Lisa Bibby. I am a realtor with Keller Williams Advantage, and I put the real back in realtor. We want you to love where you live. Questions about buying or selling your home? Call today. My website is soldbylisab.com, and you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram at Sold by Lisa B.
And I am John Gay from Jag in Detroit Podcast. I'm the podcast guy. If you have questions about starting or improving a podcast or about the podcast industry, you can find me on my website, jagindetroit.com, or on social media at jagindetroit, Jagin Detroit. Thank you for checking out this episode of the ROCC Pod, produced for the Royal Oak, Michigan Chamber of Commerce. For more information about the Chamber and how to get involved, as well as Chamber events, you can go to royaloakchamber.com. Thanks, everyone.